Hey guys, how's it going?
Very good.
Very good.
We have a full house. It's been a while.
Finally, I mean, like, talk because it's mainly because of you. We're just talking about it. Like, you've been out from this podcast for 2 weeks, so welcome back. Well, we're super glad that we didn't abandon us.
No. And honestly, guys, I love the 2 episodes that you 3 recorded. The Suave is amazing, guys. Go and check it out. The music is beautiful. And we also had a last minute update. We had Suarez sending us a little 1-minute voice note explaining the whole background of the album that they just released and the song that we recommended. So go and check it out. It's a beautiful episode. And also we just released and we already released the episode of Patrick Romantico. Go and check it out. Amazing producer, amazing life story. So definitely 2 must episodes that you have to go and listen to. But let's just jump right in. Today we have an amazing guest. He's been living in New York for over 20 years. He has a professional marketing background with major labels such as Capitol and Def Jam Records. He was also the senior VP of the global marketing and EMI, where he collaborated developing worldwide campaigns of talents such as Katy Perry, 30 Seconds to Mars, Lenny Kravitz, Janet Jackson, Snoop Dogg, Pharrell Williams, you name it. Then he went in and specialized into the whole part of artist and fan relationship. And taking from his past experience working with artists, he was the bridge between the knowledge of the US entertainment industry and Discipline Media, which is a UK startup that builds subscription-based apps. And he was there the senior VP of business development, and then he was called back to the label business where he worked in fan engagement at Universal and 300 Entertainment. Now he is the head of artists and industry development at beatBread, and he will later on explain it much further. beatBread is a music funding platform that gives financial support to promising independent artists by predicting their future earnings, and then they get out of the way so the artists can stay true to themselves and to their vision. So please, guys, give a round of applause to Matthew Tilley. How are you, Matthew?
I'm very good. Very good. It's Saturday morning, so it's nice not to have to go to work. I did a fitness class and a yoga class already this morning. I had some eggs. I'm feeling great.
That's fantastic. Honestly, thank you for being here. Welcome to the podcast. And just to start things straight off the bat, we want to ask you about how your position changed through 2.5 years at beatBread.
I mean, guys, when I joined, I think there were 3 or 4 of I say joined. I mean, I kind of didn't really join anything. It was still an idea when I got involved, right? So it was kind of like, we have this idea, we think it worked, we think we got the technology to work. How do we actually bring it to market? So those were the first conversations about, will artists like this? Will managers like this? How do we actually explain it to people? That was literally the job at the beginning. And I'm not going to sort of go through every stage of the company, but here we are. It's about almost 3 years later. There's almost 30 of us now. We've done over 700 deals. And now it's about growing the company as fast as we can. So I was just in Austin at South by Southwest. We were hosting an event for a managers forum, spreading the word. I've got a team of 4 people now. So podcasts, panels, lots of focus on marketing and developing the product. What's the next phase of our product? All of those things. So I realized I sort of skipped the whole bit in the middle, but the bit in the middle was, we got the product up and running, we grew it, we took it to market, we made it happen. So the jobs changed from like, what is beatBread? How do we define it? How do we explain it to people? To actually starting to do that. And now, okay, the original idea is up and running. What's the next idea? What's the next partnership? How do we keep growing? All of those things.
One of the things that I've noticed is that you keep making the partnerships, not just with artists, giving artists this independence to fund their careers, but also building alliances with independent labels. So what's that experience been? Honestly, bringing, especially with the label side, how is that different from having a contract with an artist?
So there's sort of 2 parts to that, right? First is true partnerships with people who. So, I mean, we haven't even talked about what beatBread is yet, but let's just assume that people know it's a funding product, right? the first thing we do is white label that for other companies. So if you're a distributor or an artist services company, or you're any sort of platform that has artists coming to it, we can white label our product on your platform. So if you go to United Masters or Symphonic or Toulost or a whole bunch of different companies and you see a funding product on their page, that's actually our product. So that's something we're just trying to go where the artists are, right? Our marketing's pretty good and we're pretty good at reaching artists, but why not just go to places where the artists already are? So if you have a website where thousands of artists are already visiting on a regular basis, then that's a good place to put our funding product, right? So that's half of the question, I think. And then the other question is, yes, we fund artists, but we also fund labels. So I'm going to sort of jump into what the product is now. We're using algorithms and data science to predict streaming, right? And so for an artist, we just look at all the artist tracks and predict how each track will perform over the next 8 years. We can do the exact same thing for a label, right? If an artist has, 100 tracks, maybe the label's got 1,000 tracks. We do the same prediction. We predict how those tracks are going to perform over the next 10 years. And then we could make an advance to the label on their revenue just in the same way as we can to an artist. So the business is the same. Of course, it's a slightly different relationship and a slightly different negotiation. But that's the general idea.
I love how we have seen lately, like a lot of new tools that are empowering artists, Like it's been a while since we have seen several cases about artists just like pursuing an independent career and not depending that much or not at all from a major label deal or like waiting for the big signature contract, And I feel that like tools and companies like beatBread are like helping and empowering these artists, just showing them that there are different ways so that they can actually just live out of their music and build their own careers, build their own teams. And we have seen this kind of trend now, but still, you've worked on labels, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about if an artist has already has everything settled, like team-wise, he has streams, he has a strong community, a fan base already, like a solid one. He sells tickets. Some of these artists can actually still receive a deal from a record label, from a major label. What would you recommend these artists, or what would you say these artists need to look out on the contract or on the deal with these major labels that might make them feel, okay, maybe it's worth it still to sign with a major label and stop being a fully independent artist?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I could have a really long answer. The first thing I'd say is, if you consider 3 phases of an artist's career, and I don't mean in time, I mean in development, right? So these phases could take 1 year, it could take 5 years. And you could think in miles per hour or kilometers per hour. It doesn't really matter, but I'm English, so I'm going to talk about miles per hour, right? I think phase 1 is 0 to 30, phase 2 is 30 to 60, and phase 3 is 60 to 90, right? But 90 in miles an hour is you're breaking the speed limit in almost every country, okay? So 0 to 30, I think these days, pretty much every artist has to do that by themselves, right? No one is really interested if you're at 0 or 5 or 10 miles an hour. That's your work to do, okay? 30 to 60, you could be in partnership with all kinds of people, right? You could be partnering with a distributor, with a management company, with a services company. And I'm going to argue that they'll all probably do a pretty similar job. It's really going to come down to how good the music is. And, you got the right team around you, you can grow that business in that 30 to 60 range. If you want to go from 60 miles an hour to 90 miles an hour, and by the way, at 90 miles an hour, I mean Drake, I mean The Weeknd, I mean Ariana Grande, I mean Taylor Swift, who all happen to be on the same label, by the way. That's weird. But anyway, if you want to go from 60 to 90, I don't think there's any place better than a major label, right? They're the ones who've really got the clout to get you on the big TV shows, on the big radio stations, on the big festivals. All of that is only going to come if you've got a major label. But we have to be really honest with ourselves. 98% of artists are never going to get into that space, right? There isn't room for a start, and there isn't the capacity in the label system, and there isn't the capacity in the consumer's mind either, because that 60 to 90 group is appealing to fans. They have super fans, of course they do, but they're also appealing to very casual fans as well. That's how you get that big, right? You absorb all of those people. So if you want to hold out for that dream, then you probably want to hold out for a major record deal. But for lots of other people, the option to retain ownership of your music, that's probably the most important thing. And secondary, have real creative control over your career, that's the trade-off you got to figure out. And so those are the kind of obvious things of giving up ownership of your music and what percentage of your income are you going to give up to the label. But I'd also really encourage people, if they're talking to a label, if they've got that far, to think about the creative match, right? The labels have very deep pockets. They can write a big check. And I'm sure it's very exciting to have a meeting with a label and they say, we're going to give you $5 million. And you go, oh my God, $5 million. There's more money than I've ever thought about. And it's easy to be dazzled by that. But we think it's much more important to find the right creative fit, right? Go talk to their head of video. Go talk to their head of PR. Go talk to their digital marketing team. Find out do they understand you? Do they get what you are? Because I've seen so many artists just spend their whole career at the label fighting with the label about what's the right way to build their brand. And that's some part of what you're likely to give up if you sign to a label. And again, label deals are developing and they're getting better. And some artists, and ones I've talked about, wouldn't be where they are without their label. But I think, lots and lots, we see hundreds of artists every week making a really good living from their streaming income. They've never been to a label. They don't need a label. So I just encourage you to think about, what am I getting and what am I giving up? And really make the old thing, make a pros and cons list, right? What are the pros of signing to a label? What are the cons of signing to the label? Because just to rewind 20 years, I think the reason everybody thinks about labels is because 20 years ago, you pretty much had to have a label, right? The music business was, and I'm going to be very, very simplistic, but it was, if you wanted to have a successful music career, you had to make sure your CD was in the stores. If ever anybody remembers CDs, those silver discs, right? Yeah. You probably just
we
about
do.
We
leave them.
Okay, good. Your CD had to be in the stores and your song had to be on the radio. Right? Again, I'm being very simplistic, but on a basic level, if you wanted to be a famous artist 20 years ago or 30 years ago, probably now, those two things had to be true, right? And the record labels controlled mostly, right, what got into the stores and what got onto the radio. So 20, 30 years ago, you had to think label, because if you didn't have a label, you were not going to be successful. It was almost impossible. You think of very rare examples, right? Like, I know a Dave Matthews Band or something who just became famous by touring and touring and touring and touring. Although, by the way, they had a major label behind them as well, right? But now you don't need one anymore. And the other thing I'll tell you is, if you look at just the numbers, across all the major labels, they sign somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 artists every year. They don't have capacity to take on more than that. And you all know, I'm sure we know from looking at the stats, there are tens of thousands of artists making a decent living from their streaming income. They couldn't all be signed to labels anyway. So, to some people, I'd say, just stop thinking about the label, right? Think about, how do you build your career on your own? Because that's the most likely way you're going to get there. And then if you are lucky enough to have the label conversation, like I said, just draw up the pros and cons of, what am I getting? What am I giving away? I did say that was going to be a long answer, didn't I? And I
loved it.
No, it's amazing, man. And actually, I think it really connects very well with something I was reading in an article in Music Business Worldwide, that in an interview that they did to beatBread, about your vision, guys, on how music labels, like business, is going to evolve, and they're going to become more like a service company. I would love if you could evolve a little bit more on that idea, because I think it connects very well with this, and I think it's very interesting and very valuable for our audience.
Yeah, no, exactly. We would like to see a world where the labels compete on the quality of their service,
exactly,
not on the size of their checkbook. Now, if you have a good manager and a smart manager who's done lots of label deals, they know this already, right? And they won't be blinded by the check, and they will go and make you sit down with all the different departments and talk to them and look at their track record. Look at your goals and how good the label is at delivering those goals. What is your goal? Do you want to be on top 40 radio? Do you want to be the biggest touring artist in the world? Do you want your video to be on MTV? I don't know if it's that relevant anymore. Like, do you want to have the most streams on YouTube? What are your goals, and how good is that label at achieving those things, right? Because some labels are really strong in some areas, some are really strong in other areas. So, but if that's what you make them compete on, not just the old story, I'm sure you guys know the phrase a bidding war, right? A bidding war just really used to be about which label was going to write the biggest check. And they all have big checkbooks and they all have big bank accounts. And if you're still dazzled by that, you're probably going to end up in an uncomfortable situation, I would guess. Because, most artists that get to sign to major labels actually don't succeed. But you could take most as being, 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 10 or whatever it is. So if they took a huge check at the beginning, they're probably going to be unrecouped, and then they get dropped, and then they're always, the label's not chasing them for the money, but they always know, oh my God, I have this unrecouped balance, right? So a big check is not necessarily the best answer anyway, but it's also not the right answer if it dazzles you from forgetting to ask, how good are your services? What can you do for me? How are you going to help me? Who are the people I'm going to work with? Do they believe in my vision? Do they understand who I am as an artist? Right? That's where we think the labels should really be competing with each other, is on how good the quality of their service is, not how many zeros they can write on the end of the check. I keep using these references like checks and CDs and stuff. I hope your audience gets
they will. We definitely get the idea. And I love the idea that you have to look the right fit, as with everything, right? But with a label, is a little bit more difficult for it to be the right fit, because it is like a big chunk that comes in front of you, and you have to make sure that all their little gears actually matches you, right? But the interesting part is that, now that you just mentioned, I started thinking, is that not everyone knows how good a label is on what kind of the business, right? I don't know if X label is good at, marketing for, R&B artists for TikTok, or so. It's very interesting for artists to start like digging into that kind of things. And definitely I feel that, and you said the other important part is the manager. The manager is a very important complement to this kind of investigation that has to be involved before signing a deal. And this goes directly to my next question, and it's like, yes, definitely labels would have to eventually change and understand how modular the whole business is starting to be. And I feel that the word and concept of label has changed and will keep changing. I feel that the word and concept of independent has changed. But I'm curious, like, on your side, how do you see it? How do you see it evolving in the next 5 years? Or do you see that this concept has reached its maximum level?
It really hasn't. If you look at the statistics, and I don't actually have numbers to quote you, but we did a little analysis of the major labels' share of new music has been declining, and I think has just dropped below 50%. And, measuring new music as music that's been released in the last year or something. The labels, obviously their catalogs are huge, right? And in terms of, you look at streaming of tracks that are more than 5 years old, the major labels are massively dominant. But if you look at their share of streaming in recently released music, it's declining, and I believe it's just dropped below 50%. And I think that's just going to go on more and more and more, right? Because kids have discovered how to put music online and how to promote themselves. And like I said, that stranglehold used to be CD in the store, music on the radio. Those are the two things. The labels controlled it. Kids now, we all know, right, discovering music on YouTube and TikTok and Spotify and Apple and all these other places. The labels really don't have much control over that. And so, as I said, they will always be the best ones at taking people from 60 miles an hour to 90 miles an hour. They're pretty good at getting people from 30 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour. I think they've sort of forgotten how to take anyone from 0 to 30, right? So if you can get yourself from 0 to 30, I'm going to say on your own, but with, hiring the right team or the right person to help you at the right time, those people can probably get you from 30 to 60 as well, right? There's very few limitations on what independent promotions companies can achieve now. And I think that's just going to keep eroding that label share in the middle, right? You look at the superstar artists, 90% of them are still going to be on major labels because the really big, getting a slot on the Grammys, right? Getting a slot on some other big award show or getting the top 10 positions on the important Spotify playlists. The labels are still really good at that. So they're not going anywhere, and we're not suggesting they should go anywhere. We think they have a really, that's an important job to do in creating superstars and keeping the top end of the music business alive. But I think the independent sector is just going to keep on and on growing.
It's completely shocking and surprising how you said the independent market has grown a lot, and we are seeing it. Like, it's nowadays super easy for artists to just like make music, put it out there. So it's like, it's logical that this is happening. And then it rings a bell. Well, it rings like a thing in my brain that I wanted to ask. For example, like, with all these huge markets and all these like audiences, independent artists everywhere, how have you handled, like with beatBread, how to choose which artists to partner up with, and how to actually like provide them these services, because I think that's also a huge challenge to just like nail it.
Yeah, it's a very boring answer, Luis, I'm afraid. It's data science, and it's only data science. So this sort of breaks my heart as a person who worked at record labels for 20 years, when it was so important to have the team listen to the music and be passionate about the artist and be excited. We don't listen to the music of the artists that we provide money for. Some people in the office might do just for fun or because they're interested, right? But we don't use any subjective judgment about how the artist looks, how the music sounds, what the video looks like, how much data that you can just see as a human being on the screen. It is all about our algorithm. So we have 10 full-time data scientists. They've written and continue to develop this really amazing algorithm that looks at any artist that has a little track record, right? We can't look at brand new artists, but if you've got 2 or 3 tracks and they've been out for at least 6 months and you're making about $100 a month in streaming income, that's enough data for our algorithm to run your tracks through our system. We have, 200,000 artists in the system now, over 20 million tracks, several billion data points, and years of history now of chart data and streaming data that we've collected. And this algorithm will make a prediction about how an artist's future streams are going to behave. And that's what we use to offer them a range of advances, right? We don't just offer one advance. We offer all these choices of how long they want the deal to be, and if they want to include new music, and if they want to keep some of their income, and all these other things. But it's just purely data science. So at the same time, people say, oh, tell us about some success stories you've had. And our kind of joke, it's not a funny joke, but we say we have 100% success rate at wiring money into artist bank account, because that's all we do, right? We don't provide any services. We're not a distributor. We're not a label. We don't promise to do anything for you except provide funding. That means we're never going to take credit for an artist who's used beatBread money to become successful, because we say we didn't really have anything to do with it. I say, imagine a chef who goes to the bank and borrows money to start his first restaurant, and the restaurant becomes a runaway success. He doesn't thank the bank for lending him the money, right? It's not when he goes to collect his Michelin star or whatever. He doesn't say, oh, thank you to HSBC for funding my dream. It's like, no, they were just a silent partner. And that's all beatBread is, right? We just provide funding and we leave you alone. So again, a long answer to your question, but we don't choose artists. Artists come to us, they've heard about us or seen us. We do some advertising, and we use data to make them offers. And
here we are big data lovers. So
I was about to say the same. We are data. We need data slogans. We are fans of data. So
it's cool to be a nerd these days, guys.
Absolutely,
it is.
Absolutely. But a bell that rings to us, I guess, Matthew, comes to like, it's amazing to predict based on data. And we also, like, as we said, we love data and we think it's the future and the present. But there's also the dark side of the industry, let's call it this way, where people trick the system, where people buy streams, where there's a lot of this type of things going on. So how does beatBread more or less like deal with this kind of stuff? Because I can imagine an artist that has some stream revenue coming from, half, let's call it this way.
I know exactly what you're saying, Max. I'll tell you, the first year we were in business, and we're 3 years in now, we did get call it scammed a couple of times.
Okay.
Artists came and we ran numbers and gave them money, and then their stream suddenly dropped off, and we looked at it and said, what the heck just happened?
Exactly.
And there's lots, when you start a business, you don't know. We didn't know streaming even existed. Now we know about it. The data science team spotted it. I'm not going to tell you how we see it.
Of course.
Now, but we see it pretty much immediately.
Amazing.
And you will not get an offer at all. You won't even get a small offer. You just get a polite note that says, unfortunately, your data does not have the characteristics our investors are looking for.
Amazing.
And that's, if you get that message, by the way, that's generally a polite way of saying, and here's the thing. We think that there's a decent amount of artists who don't actually know that streaming fraud's wrong or bad, right? They just, you can imagine a kid Googling, how do I increase my streams? And then some company advertises, get 100,000 streams for $100. It's not necessarily obvious if you think about artists who I have a whole other thing about artists should just be allowed to be artists. And it's kind of a shame that they have to be business people as well now, but hey, there's reality. But just a kid who made music in their bedroom and wants to spread it and wants to become famous, I don't think they necessarily know that the idea of buying streams is bad. But I'm here to tell you guys, don't buy streams. It's bad. Just because we can spot it, labels can spot it, everybody can spot it. It's like having fake Instagram followers or fake Twitter followers. Anybody who knows what they're doing knows how to spot that now. And it just makes you look really bad. I think there was a moment in time when people kind of didn't know and it was all a bit, and you go, oh my God, it's got 1 million Instagram, but wow, amazing. And now you look at the data behind it and you go, this is a US-based artist, 50% of their Instagram followers are in India. What?
Exactly.
Right? And then, I don't know, just an example. But you know what I mean? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it gets kind of tricky, and it's a shame that still happens. Another thing I would really want to present, let's say, to comment on is we recently did an episode with Felipe Garrido, and he mentioned, let's say, the term cultural footprint of certain artists as an impact factor for their performance in streaming, radio, and else. So he also commented that was a major factor for the whole performance of the catalog over time, let's say sustainability. So I want to ask, let's say, in that regard, how do you try to put that into a mix? How do you try to put that factor into the equation that allows you to estimate how much can I advance this artist, for example?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jose Antonio. And honestly, I don't know enough about how the algorithm actually works.
Okay.
I know it, one of the very obvious bits of data we need is what is your average dollar per stream rate? And that really will depend where your streams are coming from, right? If you're very strong in North America, your dollars per stream rate is going to be much higher than if you're mostly being streamed in Indonesia or Thailand, right? And if, again, Apple pays better than Spotify slightly. So if you're stronger in Apple, that's going to have an effect on it. So I don't know what the data scientists have built in to take all that into account, but just a little stat I can give you of the 700 deals we've made. If you look at the predicted streams and then the actual streams, overall, we're within 4%.
Wow.
Obviously, some artists are way above what we predicted, right?
Sure.
Some are way below what we predicted. But in aggregate, we're within 4% across those.
That is pretty accurate, actually.
So whatever it is, the data science team, and shout out to my data science team, they're amazing. Whatever it is they're doing to make these predictions, they're pretty good at it.
One of the things that I've loved is that besides just being a fintech company in the music industry, I feel that beatBread somehow has come to a point that is very connected to the music itself, to artists or whatever is going on at that moment with the industry, Plus, beatBread is like innovating a lot on that side. My question, I guess, would be like, how the initiatives like the Artist Advocacy Council came to mind, and can you explain us a little bit about it, and what are the updates that you have about this initiative?
Yeah, really just wanting to make sure, I'm from the music business, but lots of people at beatBread are not from the music business. Our data science team, for example, never worked in music in any way, shape or form. Now, in some ways, that's an advantage, right? Because they're looking at the data with completely clean minds. There's no bias. And that's probably helped us. But we, me and one or two other people from the music business, we don't know everything about the music business. I've worked at labels, but I've never worked in artist management. So I've never been that close to an artist. I've spent lots of time with them, but I have never really had those heart-to-heart sit-down meetings with them. So we wanted to bring some people with a broader experience, and especially some managerial experience and some experience in different genres and different geographies and all of those things, just to make sure that when we had a new idea or another thought or a question, we had a resource of people to talk to who had that broad range of experience, who could just help us to navigate and make sure we were coming up with the most, artist-friendly product that we could.
I loved it. And yeah, it's like the best way to keep the pulse on the market, right? To see, like, have that immediate advice from different, as you said, like business professionals who are in constant contact with artists. And one of the other things that I wanted to ask is, like, you guys also have like this investors network, right? And I wanted to know a little bit more about the little tendencies or trends that you have spotted when it comes for investors to invest in mid-level or entry-level artists. Because at the end, yes, for sure, one of their profiles, there must be like they love music as well, but they are investing in music for sure to diversify their portfolio, right? And mitigate certain risks from another industries. Even though they are music lovers, they still want to have some ROI, right? Some return of investment. So which have been like these trends that within beatBread you guys have spotted that these investors go to in terms of, I love this artist or that kind of artist?
So let me just rewind a little bit about the investor network. So a couple of things happened, I guess, in the first year or year and a half of doing business. Firstly, we noticed that artists coming to us and wanting to tell us about their new project, right? And how amazing it was going to be. And they're doing these tour dates. And I got these 3 featured artists who are going to be on my next track and all of these exciting things. And I was thinking, our algorithm can't capture that at all, right? The joke I always make to a manager is, you could tell me Beyonce's on your next single and your artist headlining Coachella. And our algorithm says, I don't care. That's future. I can't do anything with future information, right? So that was one thing we noticed, that we would think we were kind of underpricing some unreleased music. And then the other thing, I don't even remember what I was looking for, but I found a Reddit group of people who invest in music. And by the way, just to be clear for your audience, we're not talking at all here about the fan funding model, right? There are some companies out there doing fan funding. It's like, get all your fans to invest $20 or $50. This is serious investing, right? So we're talking to qualified investors, which means in the US, you have to have $1 million of assets outside of your primary residence, right? So this is serious people. And this collection of several hundred people on Reddit who were talking to each other about, I backed this band and I invested in this tour and I did this thing. And we were like, So we have a problem where we can't necessarily adequately reflect the value of a future release because we are not going to bring human judgment to bear on that. And we've just discovered this community of people who actually want to invest in music and are literally having to find deals, one deal at a time at the moment. So the idea we came up with of the beatBread Investor Network is, and it's only available to higher range artists at the moment, so $100,000 or more, but that range will come down in time, is to be able to say to them, share some information about your next release, share all the things that are going to make investors excited, and then we're going to make this available on a bidding platform that's not fully launched yet, and I'll share with you guys in a few weeks when that's actually out in the market. But a platform where a pre-qualified investor can come and look at these deals and bid on a fraction of them. So we split the deal up into 100 slices. The investor can buy 1 slice or 10 slices or however many they want. It's very different from that sort of crowdfunding model or fan model because we have our $100 million fund as well. If the investors bid on 40 or 60% of the deal, our fund will make up the rest, right? So you don't see these deals that are sitting there for weeks and weeks and weeks waiting to close because we're waiting for somebody to fill in the gap. We just come and fill in the gap. But it was really bringing those two ideas together of how do we get more money for artists who have great future value, or even just have a catalog that potentially may be worth more, but we're limited by our algorithm to the amount we're going to bid on it, but maybe somebody wants to bid more. And then these investors and also distributors are in this network as well. Distributors are all looking to bring good, attractive deals onto their distribution platform, bringing those two things together and creating this investor network, which ultimately we're trying to create more value from artists. Now, again, we're a business, we're in it to make money, but our goals are aligned with the artist's goals, because the more money the artist gets, and we take a fee on that, obviously the better we do at the same time. So hopefully it's kind of a win for everybody.
It for sure will be. And like Matthew want just to like emphasize, or like would like to really focus on something that I found really interesting that you just mentioned again, is that beatBread doesn't want to focus on fan-centric investment, or as you said, like $20 people that put in $20, $100, right, whatever, $1,000. You talk about serious investors. So I wanted to ask you a little bit if you could dig a little bit deeper into that, because for me, at least, when I was searching and everything, it was a little bit counterintuitive, the fact that people that are fans of the artist but don't have a lot of like, call it net worth, can invest in the artist. I don't know what's the logic behind asking for these real people, like real, let's call it quote unquote real investors, and not allowing low retail investors get in. What's the logic behind it?
First of all, there's all sorts of SEC rules and filings and all these other things. So if you're actually selling shares in something, dealing with only qualified investors just is easier and safer and more straightforward. That's one. Secondly, I'm sorry to say this, but I'm going to say it. We just don't believe in the fan funding model. If I was managing an artist, I would never suggest they do fan funding. There are so many ways to monetize your fans that fans completely understand, right? And fans have shown over and over again, they want a limited edition piece of merchandise. They want a numbered poster. They want a signed vinyl. They want all these things. And those, to me, are the optimal ways to monetize your fans, because not only are you selling them something that they clearly understand, they know what the value proposition is, and they get something actually physical that they can hold, and they feel a stronger connection with you as the artist, as opposed to selling, the concept of you bought a share of this song, and if this thing, then you'll get 2 cents next month. And like I said, lots of companies are doing it. Good luck to all of them. We just don't believe that that's something that is smart. So sorry, controversial opinion maybe, but
no, not at all. Actually, I think it's very it's not controversial. I think it's a little bit counterintuitive. At least for me, it was. I don't know for you guys, the rest of the team, but for me, it was a little bit counterintuitive. That's why I wanted to ask. But I guess also, as you said, filing and like doing all the paperwork must be easier as well. So I guess there are more than enough reasons to like just.
And I get the fact, because probably sometimes, yes, you just said it. Like one of the things is that by investing, I find investing probably, I'm not going to say everyone, but not everyone is going to understand where their money is going to be or be placed, or how is it going to be reflected, my efforts on that artist. Yeah, for sure, I'll see maybe, I don't know, oh, it's thriving and oh, I'm feeling good because I invested in them, but it's not like an easy way to put it in words, and it gets, I feel, from my perspective, it's a very personal opinion, it gets a little bit messy. A little bit messy, but I guess it's just a matter of what on opinion. It depends on the person, depends on the artist. But yeah, from my side, from my perspective, it does seem a little bit messy and somehow, and you guys say it, like it kind of corrodes the relationship between the fan and the artist.
Yeah, and look, people have been trying to do it well for years. I don't think anyone's really cracked the code yet. Maybe someone will come along and crack the code. That's hopefully they have a great business from it and everything's fantastic. It's just not a path we're going to go down.
And one of the things that I remember talking to you about is when we met is that moving forward is this whole streaming model. Like streaming for sure has unlocked a lot of new levels to discover artists, for artists to monetize from their catalog, and it's something that completely revolutionized the industry. But now we are at the point that, okay, we found some things that are not working for everyone, and there are conversations that are happening where big labels want to change this kind of structure. It's a conversation that maybe, I think Deezer started it. Now there are like other DSPs such as Tidal or SoundCloud that have actually taken an action about it. But where does beatBread stand in this whole streaming model royalty conversation?
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna tread carefully here, guys, because it's a controversial conversation, right? So on the one hand, when the major labels talk about, the abuse of the streaming platforms and things that don't make sense and things that aren't fair for real artists, we agree. We can see that, right? There are some companies who just figured out sort of how to crack the code. Not real artists, not real music, but how to make lots and lots of money from the streaming platforms. Is that good for the art? Is that good for music overall? No, I don't think so, right? So we think that there needs to be somebody looking at that and focusing on that. But again, you've got to apply the judgment so sensitively, right? Because is it a real artist who's just decided to focus on music for kids and believes passionately in making music for kids and has figured out how to make money from that? That's a fantastic thing, as opposed to, is it a corporation who's figured out an algorithm that writes music that appeals to kids, that there's no art, there's no human being, there's no nothing? It gets really tricky, right? It's sort of like the censorship question of like, well, where do you draw the line and who's deciding and all of those things? But there's definitely something that needs to be looked at that end of the scale. But then at the other end of the scale, what some people at the majors seem to be suggesting is, well, artists who are signed to major labels should be paid more because they're definitely legitimate and real. And then what can happen there is what's going to get lost in the middle is all the legit independent artists, right, who would get paid less per stream just because they're not signed to a major label. And I realize I'm sort of overly simplifying the idea here. What I'm saying is the streaming ecosystem isn't perfect. At the same time, it's allowed thousands and thousands of artists to earn a living from music who never would have been able to do it before. Does it probably need some fixing and adjustment? Yes. Is that going to have to be done really carefully by some really smart people? Also, yes.
That's wonderful. And
that's a very political answer.
No, it's perfect.
Yes,
perfect.
Yeah, I know.
Here.
No, don't worry. We don't want to put you on the spot or anything. Trying to wrap up, let's say, this whole conversation, also going around the economic intricacies that artists face nowadays and that allow the initiatives like beatBread to flourish. Let's say, what would you say are the key components? If you could name 3, that would be awesome. That the traditional banking system, the record labels, and other participants in the value chain don't understand, that allow initiatives like beatBread to grow, to flourish, to appear, and to be a solid, concrete, let's say, solution for independent artists, for independent labels?
That's a great question. I mean, funnily enough, so I was in Austin this week for South by Southwest, and I caught up with a friend of mine I used to know when I was at a major label. He's still at one of the major record companies. And he said, I have a finance background and a business background, and I've been watching you guys at beatBread and just wondering, how the heck did you do this? How did you make this work? And I have to go back to our data science team. Like it was months and months and months of a data science project and building an algorithm and testing and testing and testing to get to the point where you're confident enough in the data that you're going to make an investment purely based on the data, right? And you mentioned banks. I don't think an artist can walk it. We can all take our pay slips from our employer, right, and walk into a bank and say, I'd like to borrow some money. And they say, okay, let me look at make sure you get paid every month and all of those things. I think it's going to be a long time before an artist can take their DistroKid statement into their local bank and say, can I borrow? Look, I'm making all this money. Can I borrow some? I think the bank's going to say what? So I think it was just, beatBread is a lucky combination. I mean, you make luck, right? Sometimes, but Peter, who's our CEO, has worked in a lot of different startups. He fell into the music business almost accidentally about 7 years ago. He brought that outsider's mindset and looked at things differently. He's a consumer marketing specialist, so he gets what consumers want and how they think. And then you had John, his co-founder, who's the data scientist who's built models in energy and insurance and all these other things, who came at the data set with a completely fresh mind. And then you had me and a few other people who understand the music business and what works and what doesn't work and what's lacking. And when just bringing those three things together and just coming at it from a different angle, but having this data on our side, right? That I think just allowed us to do things differently and to hopefully provide another option for artists that they just don't have anywhere else.
And I think also like you guys understood like quite well the whole independence part, because at some point, yeah, artists were taking action on it, but what I feel personally is that the industry was kind of ignoring, because it's not a business if the artists go that way for the traditional model of how the music industry works. So, and now that we have companies that like beatBread doing this kind of stuff, and also like audio distributors, and I was also like going to ask you that, like that are taking a little bit more of advantage and placing a foot down very strong and saying, okay, this independent thing is not going anywhere, and there is a big market for artists for them to be taken care of, because if we don't do it, they will eventually do it. So we might as well provide the best practices for them, right?
Yeah, no, and as you said, the distributors are really, by the way, if you want to look at some exciting businesses, go look at the independent distribution world. There's some huge companies growing really fast, doing some exciting things, helping artists grow their brand. They're offering advances as well, right? Some of them are offering advances that we're actually the power behind, whether we're providing the money or just providing the tools for them to make it happen. But I would always say to an artist, if you take an advance from a distributor, you're tied to that distributor. And maybe that distributor is going to give you a great service. Maybe they're going to give you a great service in the beginning. Maybe it's going to tail off. Maybe you really like a person there who then ends up leaving. If you take an advance from beatBread, we will usually let you move distributors during our deal if you want to. So we just think taking your decisions independently, right? Who's the best distributor? Who's got the best finance offering? Who's going to give me the best services? If you take each of those decisions separately, we think you are more likely to end up in the best position as an artist than taking a bundle in some way.
Fantastic. Matthew, this was amazing. Honestly, the time went by so fast. And we honestly, we appreciate like every kind of knowledge that you share with us. We really do. And well, in this moment, the channel is yours. I don't know if you want to plug anything that you want, or how can people contact you, or if you want to leave any final message to our audience.
Yeah, guys, it's as simple as if you have about 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, which is about $100 a month in streaming income, go to beatBread.com. By the way, I just want to explain in case anybody's thinking, what is that name? Beat as in music, bread is American English slang for money, right? So beat, music, bread, money. It's money for music. Just in case anybody didn't know that. Sometimes I think people must be like, what?
It's a frequently asked question.
Yeah. Beatbread.com, just go there. You just got to put in your artist name and an email address. And within 20 or 30 minutes, you'll get some estimates from us on what advances you can get against your streaming income. Then you upload your distribution reports. The whole process normally takes a week or two, and you can get funded. It's as simple as that. hello@beatbread.com if you have questions. But before you ask questions, I'd really encourage you to go to our YouTube channel or our Instagram, which is Instagram, at beatBread. We're at beatBread pretty much everywhere. Our website also has a bunch of videos and FAQs and tons of like knowledge centers and articles and stuff. Most of the answers you need are probably there, but if there's something you really can't figure out, then drop us a line at hello@beatbread.com.
Fantastic. Thank you, Matthew. Again, guys, and everyone who has been listening, really appreciate the love, and this was just lovely.
Gracias, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.
Adios.
Take care.
Bye.
Hey, si ya llegaste hasta acá, muchas gracias por escucharnos. No te olvides de seguirnos en Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora o la plataforma digital que sea de tu preferencia. Si te gustó el capítulo, si te gusta el podcast, no olvides recomendarnos a tu grupo de amigos, colegas. Esa es la mejor manera y la manera más orgánica de que sigamos creciendo esta comunidad. También nos puedes encontrar en Instagram, Facebook, YouTube como 8000 kilómetros podcast, y cualquier comentario, duda, sugerencia para mejorar el podcast es más que bienvenida. Nos vemos en el siguiente episodio.